तू चलता चल, तू चलता चल, तू चलता चल.
Good morning, sir.
Good morning, Goodman. Vanisa, you are ready to answer a lot of queries, ना? इतने बार recommend हो गए हो तो सब पूछना चाहेंगे क्या हुआ वजह and all that, you know?
Yes, sir. Yes.
Yeah, Yogita, please go ahead.
Congratulations, first of all, at least on all 4 consecutive recommendations.
Thank you, ma'am.
So this is a unique experience sharing where we
Yes.
have consecutive recommendations, merit list awaited. But yes, the process of getting this back-to-back recommendations, it's a process that we need to, but we have to keep up our progress. कभी कभी क्या होता है screen first time recommendation, next time screened out. So
Yes.
Please tell us in general, how did you keep your performance level good enough to be consistently getting recommended?
Yes, ma'am. Ma'am, so I was recommended 4 times in the army. Air Force, I was not able to get recommended. But what made me going was working hard each time, improving upon the last attempts that I did, because I used to get merit out. I was getting merit out again and again. So I had to improve my performance in all the aspects, one notch above everyone. So first of all, starting from screening, ma'am, OIR, I still used to practice every time I went for my screening. I never underestimated my OIR. And 1 week before I used to practice. And ma'am, moving on to the story. Story is very important. I used to only write 7 to 8 lines of story, not more than that. And I used to make sure that the actions that I put in, 4 to 5 lines are actions in that, and actions that took qualitative actions. So I would give an example here, ma'am. Like this time there was a picture that there was this man who was running, and it was a bit hilly area. So I focused on writing more of actions. I wrote that, okay, there's this A person who used to be active in sports in school. Now his goal is to represent India in Olympics. This was my 2 line, and then I focused on action, like how he practiced for it, how he practiced in hilly terrains and flats, how he made sure his diet was up to the mark, how he followed all his instructions of his coach, how he he made sure he did not have any injury. So these are the 4-5 actions that I wrote, but it was a qualitative actions, not anything he did this. It should be very specific. So after that, I wrote, after his persistence and hard work, he finally was able to represent India in Olympics. This was my story, 5 to 6 lines, and I was done. And then I focused on the narration part. Narration part, usually in the girls batch, all of the girls are very good at narration. So, and especially the JAG branch, because they're all lawyers, so everybody knows how to narrate. So I focus on voice modulation, expressions, hand movements, but not much. So I never kept my hand on my lap. I always made sure that I would have hand movements. I would make eye contacts with my peers. And so that, and I always kept my narration 30 seconds max, not more than that. And so there I performed very well. And in group discussion is always a fish market. So this time we did not even divide the group. We had 15 people in our group, and we had to discuss amongst ourselves. So I made sure to give 2-3 points. That's it, valid points. And if it is getting a lot of fish market, then I made sure that I tell them ki dheere baat karo, yeah, let's speak one by one. So the assessors are noticing all of that. I never shouted or I never interrupted anyone. And I made sure that I take 2 common stories. There are always two stories are in majority. Suppose one is of trekking, one is of camping, or something or like that. So I used to always make sure to say that let's combine 2 of these stories. So that is one of the aspects I always notice, that there are 2 common stories every time. So let's not focus on one story, let's combine both these stories. So we take everyone together. So that is how I made sure. And lecturate and narration and OIR and story writing is the main part. GD, you just have to show that you are, you can work in a group. That's it. That's how I always got screened in for the army. And anything, ma'am, that is all for the screening part. That is all I focused upon. And moving on the psych part that I would like. So I was very weak at WATs. And in all my 4 recommendations, I never was able to complete WATs, all of them. I always left 5 or 6 of them. I always used to leave. And most of this, and 4 to 5 sentences, I only used to write half of them. So I was never used to. So I did practice it, but I was not able to complete it. So I suggest that you should practice WATs. And write short sentences. I always used to write long sentences and positive sentences, no negative sentences at all. So, and stories, ma'am, yeah, the 12 stories in my, so I gave 6 attempts for the army and 2 attempts for the Air Force. So after my 8 attempts, I know kis type ki wo aati hai, pictures. So it was almost similar everywhere. There is always a person standing, person running. So I did not preconceive a story, but I did make sure that I brainstorm ideas. कि कौन से ideas पे I can write certain stories. No preconceived notions, but only ideas. So like a startup story, education, higher education, women empowerment, then sports. So all of these are the themes that I made sure कि I could make stories on them. And if I look at a picture and if a theme sets in, then I write. Otherwise, I write on the spot whatever I perceive. So that's how I went about all the 12 stories that I wrote. And moving on to SRTs. SRTs, I always aimed that I should complete 60 of them. WATs I was not able to complete, but SRTs I always made sure that I have to complete. And how did I go about it was I always wrote short sentences. For example, there was one SRT that you are going to college and someone is following you. You will dash. So I wrote, there was nothing suspicious that they had written there. So I just wrote, I will go to college, be alert. That's it, because there was nothing suspicious in it. So I just wrote pointers, no sentences at all. So there was another SRT that said, your parents are asking you to do law, asking you to take up a job, but you want to go for higher education. So I just wrote, have a conversation with them, sort it out. That's it. Only 2 words. That's it. Done. So I did not elaborate upon it. So that's how I completed all the SRTs and all my 4 recommendations that I have achieved. And moving on to SD, self description, ma'am. I always see people are filling pages of self-description, but I never did that. I used to always complete my self-description in 10 minutes. We used to have, I think, 15 minutes. So I used to complete in 10 minutes, 4 to 5 lines, that's it. Not more than that. And I made sure that if I'm writing about my parents, I used to write something personal. I wouldn't go with academics in that. And if I'm writing about my friends, I would focus on how I help them, or how I'm approachable or I'm not approachable, or how I'm trustworthy or I'm not trustworthy. Those are the aspects that I focused upon. And if I'm writing about my colleagues, then you focus upon your work aspect. Or if I'm writing about my teachers, then I focus upon writing about academics. So I used to make sure to write at least one weaknesses or one thing that I have to work upon in all the SDs that I wrote. And in the final, that is the psychological part. So ma'am, should I add anything else, or should I move on to the interview?
How that progression happened in the sense, what did you do to keep improving on these aspects of psychology?
Okay, ma'am. So
did you practice or did you?
Yes, ma'am. Psychology, I did not practice. I never practiced psychology, but I did brainstorm upon the ideas. So in my first recommendation, first recommendation was okay, but second, after these many attempts, your mind starts to have a mind block. You don't get ideas. You get repeated ideas. पिछले attempt में जो लिखा है, वो इस attempt में भी तुम लिखोगे. So that's how you. So I made sure that I brainstorm different themes. I read newspapers. So अगर उसमें कुछ आया कि some woman has started up her own business. So I made sure to read that story. That's it. And so this is how I prepared. I brainstormed ideas for my next attempts. I always did that. And for SRT and all of that, the approach was the same. That it has worked for me always. So there was no difference in the approach for SRT. It was the same. I have to complete all of them. That was only my aim. So I did not, psychology I never practiced, but stories I did brainstorm the ideas, what I have to write.
Now, please tell us before moving on to interview part, the GTO part, especially for physical fitness and all,
Yes.
what all is,
Hmm.
you keep doing all 4 attempts?
Ma'am, physical part is very important according to me. That is the one part that it depends only on you, not on the group. So for physical part, so I had told me to improve upon it. So I did regularly. I had joined a gym. So I used to go to the gym. Otherwise, if not, then I go for a run sometimes. But I mainly go to the gym, and I do cardio or weightlifting or mixed. I do it every day. I take one off once a week, but I made sure I go every day. So, and how it worked in my GTO part was, ma'am, firstly, it works in your GOR, group obstacle race. So this time I had a very different experience, this recommendation. So always I have had a group with everybody had a good fitness, like everybody was able to do all the obstacles. But this time our team was not that fit. Not everybody was fit, and we cannot move to other obstacle unless and until a team, all of the members of the team has done the obstacle. So this time what happened was, the other group had moved, already done 2 obstacles and moved ahead, and we were on the first obstacle, second obstacle itself, where we have to make a 8. So the GTO, we done GTO was like, okay, leave the next obstacle, you are very slow, move on to the next obstacle. So he said that, and our motivation did go down, but he did see how we, even then we move ahead. So I think that time your approach, how you approach your team, how you encourage them also matters. I was able to do the obstacle, but if your team is not able to do it, then what's the use? So always I made sure to do well in all the obstacles myself, and after doing it, made sure that my team is also able to do it, encourage them to do it. So that time I think I stood out because I did work out, or I was physically fit that time. So I was able to do all the GOR obstacles, and I was able to repeat it also, because sometimes GTO asks you, okay, you can do it for some one of your team members. So that is one aspect where your physical fitness matters a lot, and you can stand out. And secondly, individual obstacles, it matters because you get 3 minutes, so I was able to do 9 this time. So that time GTO sees that if you're able to only do it do GOR obstacles and with help of your team, or you're really fit or not. So that time you have to prove, okay, you are fit, you are not only able to do it because of your team. So that is one time that you can stand out again. So I made sure that time I don't have to ruin my performance, no matter what. I have to do well in all the individual tasks. And during the group task that is there, so it also matters how you hold the plank. Are you able to hold the plank? Are you able to balance the plank on that small square? So that time again, physical fitness matters. So it helped because I used to do weightlifting in gym. So it used to help me. I used to balance very nicely in holding the plank as well. So for girls, it is especially, it becomes a bit heavy. Even for boys, I'm not sure, but the planks are heavy. So that time the physical fitness comes into picture, and the teammates around you, they see who is physically fit, who is able to hold the plank. So in the command task also, they call you because you're able to handle all the materials. So these are the 3 aspects where physical fitness came into picture always.
So tell us, how did you improve on your knowledge part, the knowledge base? Any channels did you refer to, or did you make notes of the same? Because your vocabulary is also very good.
Ma'am, knowledge part, because I studied for CDS. So that because of that, I was aware about what is going around the world and in India. But the thing was, when I read this time so how I made notes 1 week before. What are the late in CDS, I knew the static part, but the current affairs I did go through 1 week before it. What is going on in the news? So I read it continuously. I analyzed the aspect, and I did make notes. For example, this time the main aspect was G20 summit. So how I made notes upon it was G20 pehle ka hua tha. So right now it is in India. Is it the first presidency or is it a second presidency? Then after this, where will G20 summit be hosted? So I went about it like that. And then what is the importance of G20 summit? How many countries are in G20 summit? So these are the 3-4 aspects that I focused upon while making notes, and all of it. So even if I'm talking about suppose I go about recently the election commission said that they will be putting up electoral polls, electoral ballots in for migrants. Like in Maharashtra, they will put up the ballot for if the elections are in UP for their migrants. So that this was a news that was there currently. So I made notes. What is election commission? How did it come into picture? What is the role of election commission? What is, and since I'm a law student, what is the article under which election commission comes? So what is the importance of this news? Like, why is it important? What are the rate of migration in the country? So all of this, that is how I went about current affairs or current news. And static part, I developed it during studying my CDS, for my CDS, ma'am, history, geography, and all of that. So this is how I approached current affairs mainly while studying for interview.
So now coming to the interview part, how were the 4 interviews, recommendation interviews different? If different, were they different, and how about unique things did you see in yourself, like grooming, continuous improvement in interview part as well?
Ma'am, previously when I used to give interviews, I used to get flustered a lot. Suppose if I was not able to answer one question, then I used to get flustered and I used to mess up all my other questions as well. So in my first interview where I got recommended, I made sure that I was calm. Even if I don't know one answer, it's okay. I'll just let it go and answer the other question. But once I went to the second interview after my recommendation, so the IO expects you to know to be at a certain level, like if you're previously recommended. So I felt that way. So this time what happened was my IO was a bit passive aggressive. So whenever I answered something, suppose it is upon law, so he made sure that he told me, this is not the way you answer, you are a lawyer, this is not a non-tech entry, this is a JAG entry. So he made sure he used to poke me every time I answered some question. So whenever he did that, I made sure I have to remain calm. So I used to talk to myself while in the interview as well. Like, okay, stay calm. If I don't know this, it is okay. Move on. Next question. So, and the other different part was the IO was digressing from the topic whenever I used to answer something. For example, he asked me, why do you want to join Indian Army? So I started answering it, but then he changed the question and asked me if I had ever taken coaching. So I said yes. Then he asked me questions upon that and he said, okay. So that time I used my presence of mind and went back to the question why I wanted to join the Indian Army. So he did that a lot of times. Whenever I used to answer something, he used to digress from the topic, ask me something else, and then say, okay. So I made sure to come back to the point which I was mentioning. So that is how they did it this time. So we had a different interviewer. 2 recommended candidates were there with me. So since the president had taken my interview previously, so vice president took it this time for both of us. So he made sure he was a bit passive aggressive with us this time. And then he used to also jump into questions. He used to ask about education, and then he used to jump on your extracurriculars. Then he used to jump upon current affairs. So that is how we did it this time. That was a different this time, because in an interview we always had a good interview. Like, okay, this question next is extracurricular, next is okay, current affairs. But this time he was jumping from one topic to another, and so I had to think on my feet and I had to always be there in the room. So I did not so I come back to all the topics that he asked me. And one more part I wanted to say, ma'am, was interview. So I mostly focused upon the personal part. Current affairs, okay, I can only do so much of current affairs. But personal, I made sure that I'm able to answer all the personal questions, my strengths and weaknesses with examples. So whenever he asked me an example, I never had to think. I knew, okay, this is the weakness and this is the instance they have to say. So this is one thing that I can always, and I always prepared from home. Examples and weaknesses, strengths. Same about your parents, same about my friends. I always made sure to give examples. And so if the current affairs you are not able to answer, so I can still go and answer it in the conference if they ask me. But if I don't answer something personal, So I feel that it tells a lot about you that you don't know about yourself. So that is one aspect that I noticed always during all my 4 recommendations. I was always good at the personal part. There were times that I was not able to answer current affairs when he dug deeper into it. Like this time he asked me what are the current affairs. He asked me G20 summit. So he asked me how many countries are there in G20 summit. So I told him, so 19 plus 1. So he's like, are you sure? So I was like, yes, sir, 19 countries, 1 European Union. So he went to how many countries does European Union have? After that, he shifted to FIFA World Cup. Where was it held? So I said Qatar. Then he asked me about Middle Eastern countries. So he dived deeper, and there was a time when I was not able to answer his questions. So that is okay if you're not able to. But in personal, when he digs deeper, I always make sure to go deep when I prepare. Like my strengths, how I work upon my strengths and weaknesses, what are the examples, and how I have improved right now. Till now, I have improved upon it, and what more I am doing about it. These are the 4 aspects that I always focus upon when I'm preparing for my personal questions. And all the interviews were based on this only: knowledge, current, and personal. So this is how I prepared for all of them, and I made sure not to get flustered. That was one of my weaknesses that I had.
So tell us something regarding your overall performance, how you evaluate yourself. Did you keep judging yourself? इस बार हो जाएगा कि नहीं, इस बार मेरे turn होगा कि नहीं? Some kind of nervousness that students pass through, and especially this would be for girls getting merit out or something. So can you please have some advices?
So first time I got merit out, it was always demotivating when you get merit out. It is always that way. But then I kept telling myself, okay, I have more attempts to go. So what I focused upon was doing well in all the 3 aspects: psychological test, interview, and GTO. So what was happening till now was I was performing okay in GTO, good in interview, or okay in interview, good in GTO. So this time what I did was I focused on all the 3 aspects and made sure that no matter what, I have to perform good in all the 3 of them. So, and when I went for my screening is, I think, the most unpredictable part. So I always focus on screening while I'm at screening. And when I'm giving my interview, I focus on doing well in the interview. So I divided all the steps into 3 parts, and I focused doing well in that one step. I never thought about merit. I never thought about recommendation. While I'm in screening, I thought about how I should get screened in. While I'm giving my psychological test, I thought about how I going to finish it and how well I'm going to do it in psychological test. Once psychological test is done, then I focus upon my interview. Then and how am I going to do? So I suggest that always divide the journey into parts and focus on that particular aspect, and not whether I will get merit in or not. So that is after you get recommended. That is after you get medically fit. So after that anxiety is always there whether I will get merit in or not. But when I go for my SSB, I always divide it into parts. So that's like first goal is screening. Okay, so I got screened in. Second is psychological test. Okay, I did it well in psychological test. Ho gaya. Then interview. Okay, there was a time, this time I felt I did not do well in interview because I don't know, I was not able to gauge how I did, because certain questions I answered wrong, certain I answered right. And he was always pointing me out, are you sure this is the answer? Go back and look. Are you sure this is the answer? Go back and look. So I was not sure. So that time I was a bit disappointed because my interview happened immediately after my psychological test. So this mistake I had done in my first conference, that once my interview was over, I thought, okay, ab to honge hi nahi recommend. But this time I did not do that mistake because I don't know how my interview went that time. So I focused on doing well in GTO. Okay, interview is done. We'll see that after GTO. So I focused on GTO day 1. GTO also did the same thing. Group discussion hai. Okay, I'll focus on group discussion. Okay, done. Then PGT hai. Focus on PGT. PGT done. So always divide it into steps and do well in that step. You will automatically get recommended. So I never thought about recommendation at the screening level itself. So that is how I went about it.
Part, how did NFA help you in your all this progression, personal interactions with sir?
Yes, ma'am. So with sir, I always sir asked me to focus upon my physical fitness. That time when sir told me, I never understood ki physical fitness to theek hai. There's no particular test about physical fitness. But then I went there and I gave these many attempts. That time I realized, okay, it does matter. So that is how sir initially told me. So I worked upon what sir told me. Secondly, he asked me to be thorough upon my law subjects. So in my JAG interview, that did help because he asked me a lot of law questions there. In previous attempts, law questions were asked, but not much. But this time he did ask me. So I was thorough with that. So that's how I made sure to follow sir's advice. So I was thorough with my law subjects. And thirdly, sir always kept me motivated. So I got merit out thrice now. So still I'm not bogged down. So I think that is how sir helps me keep motivated and also helps me to not give up and do well in life. So I think these are the three aspects that NFA helped me and sir helped me.
Last part, how did girls group or group activities amongst other groups help you?
Ma'am, initially I was very active in the group when I was in so there was this one of my very good friend Kirat. So we made sure to even interact after our group sessions are over. So we used to interact about our JAG sessions, a JAG interview, like how to go about it, what do you do, what else we can do. And the group discussion also helped me to gain a bit confidence. So now whenever I go to GDs, I'm very pretty calm because I've already practiced it in NFA groups. And also during GP group group planning exercises, since I have practiced it in my NFA group, I know that everybody will have different viewpoints. Everybody won't have a same viewpoint. So I was also pretty used to that as well and how to tackle that part. So all the group tasks that were there, so NFA group that helped me to gain a bit confidence and to familiarize me with the concept, to be ready for it. That's it.
Sir, now I give it to Nehru, sir.
Yes, ma'am.
Actually, Vanisa, I don't have any questions for you.
Yes.
I only am guilty in front of you because मैंने तुमको जो बताया तुमने सब कुछ किया लेकिन तुमने मेरे को एक बात बताई और वो भी मैंने नहीं की वो मैंने करीब की 1 हफ्ता 10 दिन You told me to get out of this politics and all that and write on that. I remember that very much. And I did take that word of your advice very seriously. मैं सोचा यार इसने बोला है लड़की ने तो ध्यान देना चाहिए. But what happened, Vanisa, I'm just justifying. Maybe I'm right, wrong, I don't know.
Yes.
I said, यार ये भी तो बहुत बड़ा cause है यार देश के लिए. तो ठीक है, No Frills Academy तो छोटी चीज है. अब हिंदुस्तान कहाँ जा रहा है? I feel pretty strongly about that. So I really could not refrain. I'm not saying whether it is good, bad or whatever. This is what I did. तो मैं तो आपकी नजरों में तो मैं गिरा हुआ हूँ. मैंने तो काम ठीक किया नहीं. जो आपने मुझे कहा, ठीक है. Now you are open to questions from others. I'm really impressed by you, Vanisa. You've been a very nice student, a dream student, and I would love to stay in touch with you always and see you growing in life. And this is what it is.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you, sir.
Okay, then all of you take care. God bless. Bye-bye. God bless.